This is the Winning in Winnipeg podcast, where we talk to top performing business owners, executives, entrepreneurs, and local Winnipeg celebrities. We get to learn who they are, how they think, and we get to hear their perspective about what's really going on in Winnipeg and their businesses. Today I have Jon Simcoe. Jon Simcoe is a Winnipeg native that saw a path to success through real estate investing. Jon's primary focus is rent-to-own deals, where he has taken the industry by storm. Jon has won an incredible amount of industry awards, from Newcomer Investor of the Year to Most Capital Raised, including 2 Rent-to-Own All-Star Awards. Jon was also the president of the Canadian Association of Rent-to-Own Professionals. Now, I know there's a lot more I could tell you about him, but I'm just going to let you or him tell you the rest, really. I appreciate you being here.
Yeah, thanks, Dan. Thanks for having me.
Now, I know we got to spend the other night kind of talking and getting to know each other, but I feel we kind of just scratched the surface. Like there's so much that has to go in to creating a business like you have. That is, is this something I want to find out is intentional? What's actually just intrinsically driving you, stuff like that. So I guess the first thing is diving a little deper into, in your words, kind of telling.
There's always a lot of work that goes into everything that not everyone sees. It's that analogy of that iceberg floating by, and there's all that work, because the iceberg's much bigger than just what you see on the surface. So there's a lot of, a friend of ours, we used to always go around saying, respect the grind all the time, respect the grind. Or he'd say the grind includes Friday, or the grind includes Sunday. You'd go around saying these things, but it's true. So a lot of people would say, what's your secret to some of the success? And a lot of it's just, in the early days, it was outworking someone else. It was when I had a regular job, like 40-hour week type of job, it was like spending time in the evenings growing a side business.
Yeah.
Spending time on the weekends working a second job.
What was that job again? Your first kind of regular job?
It's like a first regular job. I did a lot of plumbing. So I started out as a weekend on-call guy for Roto-Rooter here in Winnipeg.
Oh, that's right.
We had the office was on Wellington Crescent. And I remember because I grew up in Oakbank. So I was like a country boy. And I started this job, I was like 16, had my driver's license, got a plumbing van, and went to do house calls, and had this pager because it was back in the late 90s.
So good.
I would get pages while I was in high school and have to excuse myself from class to go respond to my plumbing customers at the time. And so that eventually evolved into like working for the city of Winnipeg's water and waste department.
Mm-hmm.
And then when I worked for the city of Winnipeg, I also was a student studying architecture in the faculty of architecture at the University of Manitoba. And in the evenings, I grew my Taekwondo club. And I had that with a friend of mine, and we grew that for 5 straight years. And our business doubled in size year over year for 5 straight years as well. So we had unbelievable growth, but it was just something that was like, because we enjoyed doing it. It wasn't necessarily an endeavor to make as much money as possible. It was about delivering a fair service that was good value to the client. I definitely, looking back on it, know that we could have charged more and would have still had the same level of popularity and same number of clients, because we sold out every year. Every time we just had to make more square footage available, more teachers available, more class times available, and they always sold out. So every time we offered it, it sold out. And it was funny because someone said to me, well, are you going to go be an architect and get your undergraduate? And I was looking at a couple of different places here in Winnipeg that were poised to hire me as a fresh grad. And I remember finding out how much those people made in terms of money. And I thought, I'm already making more, like just as much or more right? with my hobby business, my Taekwondo club in the evenings.
Yeah.
It's making just as much as if I actually had this degree and actually went to go work in the field.
Yeah.
And it was this aha moment that like you could achieve more doing less, because that was just a couple hours in the evening.
Mm-hmm.
2 hours of teaching, time to open the club, time to clean it up and close the club.
Yeah. So how, in your early little job, like your first jobs, how did you go from one to there? When did you know that Roto-Rooter was done, to go to water and waste, from water and waste to the Taekwondo at the same time, but then going full time with Taekwondo? Was that intentional? Was it just like in the flow? Was it for money?
So it was always like work a lot, like spare time was always spent working, doing farm work in between all of that, even while at Roto-Rooter, even while having the Taekwondo club. If I had time on the weekends, I'd go throw hay bales. And it's not a cheap program to go through. And I also prided myself on having a fairly nice automobile at the time. Nothing brand new, but a nice sports car with a nice paint job and a nice set of rims goes a long way to looking good and feeling good. You don't have to spend a lot of money to accomplish that, but it was like something I always wanted instead of having a piece of junk car, right?
Yeah, that makes sense. So one of the biggest things that intrigued me is really how passionate you are. It seems in business, but really anything that's kind of that you hold dear. So how you showed up in your like Taekwondo club, you went all in. Your real estate, you went all in. Cars, you go all in. Have you always been like this all in kind of mentality?
Very much so. There's no reason to do something halfway. You're either doing it or you're not. I also have like coaches and mentors and stuff too. And one of them just remarked to me in the last week, they said, Jon, you're either an on switch or an off switch. Where's the dimmer? Where's the in-between point? Right. And I guess that's just really what, if I believe in something, I'm going to go all in on it.
Right. And what does that look like? What does it look like to be all in versus not for you?
Well, not is like just saying no, moving on to something else. Saying no is a perfectly acceptable thing, which is something I've learned in the last 4 or 5 years, is to actually say no to a lot of things.
Right.
Because they can waste your time, take up a lot of your time, and you can't feel bad about something you said no to, even if it like became successful later on, or maybe a colleague of mine or a friend went and spearheaded the company or took charge in some other way, and I said no, I don't want to do that.
Yeah.
And then they're very successful at it. I applaud their success. I go, wow, that really worked out good for him.
Yeah.
So I don't mind. I guess it comes down to an abundance mentality. And so when you find something, if it can work with your core values, then like it's okay to consider it and look at it. If it doesn't, or it's just not really going to help your main mission out, then you need to just say no. Even if it's perfectly good, it's about not getting distracted by those shiny objects out there.
Right. Yeah. That makes sense. And did you always know that you were going to be a business owner? Did you currently you're a one-man show right now and have been for a long time, and you have done more real estate deals than not only people but investors, more deals than most investors will do. You've done in 1 year than most investors will do in their life.
Yeah.
So did you always know you were going to be a business owner? Did that kind of...
I don't know what it was. I guess I was probably some young kid in the 80s and probably saw on TV some guy show up to a big office building with a suit and a tie on, and he showed up in a red Ferrari, probably like a 308 or something like a Magnum PI style, maybe a Testarossa from the day. But I remember just like seeing that and being like, well, I could be a businessman. And it wasn't about the suit and tie for me, but I saw like that red Ferrari, and he like, not only that, but like he was treated like a man of importance as well.
Yeah.
And then and I don't remember what else happens in that flashback, but there was this well-dressed business owner, and it suddenly became like, wait, you mean I don't need to have a job necessarily? I mean, I could own something and be the business owner. Mm-hmm. I could own a property and be a landlord and charge rent and have an income from it. I could sell something other than my labor or sell a service.
Right.
Like even even the concept. Like nobody really taught me to hire employees to teach Taekwondo lessons while I'm charging the customer retail price. And I'm paying someone who got their black belt, who used to pay me to take lessons. Now I'm paying them, and they're going, this is phenomenal that I can do something I love and get paid a little bit. And I'm going, well, I'm in university. I'm not even there at the club on some of the evenings. I would teach Tuesdays and Thursdays.
Yep.
And the rest of the week, they would take care of everything.
Yeah.
And I'd make $200 a night.
So you're
whether I was there or not. And I thought, geez, this is pretty good. And it was just something that kind of happened.
Yeah.
I was scared to open the club at the very beginning, to be honest. I was very nervous.
Yeah.
I didn't know how it would go.
Yeah. It kind of seems like that was just for you. It kind of seems like that is the common sense route as far as, opening a business and then just hiring someone to take over some of your stuff and then grow as you go. Like that's not intrinsic to a lot of people, right? And that's why it's so cool.
I only had so much time of my own. I realized that I became specialized and I started looking at, okay, if I wanted to expand and have more nights of the week, there's definitely I'm getting phone calls from people from all this neighboring areas, all wanting to put their kids in. We're sold out. We cannot fit to capacity more kids in this room. And we had a lot of adult students too. We had a whole mix and a lot of families as well. Father and a couple daughters that would take it, and, which is always it's really good for good for bonding too, even fathers and sons as well, and mothers. I had a whole entire family unit, the Patricks, and so they were always very dedicated and into it. So it helps when the people you're serving also really enjoy themselves with what you're providing them. Yeah. Seeing some of the lessons that those kids would learn and then running into them as an adult or seeing them later on. A few of them I've met up with in the last few years where there's been almost no contact for more than a decade. They're adults. They've got grown up jobs now. And it's hey, what are you up to? And it's nice to see that some of them are still very polite and well-mannered, people they were when they were in the club.
Right. Well, Taekwondo, I mean, that's a phenomenal, not only physical foundation, but character-wise. And, a lot of the lessons that you teach in Taekwondo apply to life, apply to business, apply to everything.
It comes to that, never give up, perseverance. And there's always a way. My father always imbued us with the thought that he almost forbade the word no. It's that's not possible. And he would immediately correct us. There is another way, find another way to do it. So when there's a lot of no's in front of you, you just have to keep trying it. It's the guy who invented the light bulb tried a whole bunch of times before he actually figured out how to make the light bulb. And so sometimes you're going to get some no's and you have to go out and ask good questions. And, I like to pretend I put on an imaginary PI hat and I'm this investigator and I got to find these things out. And when there's a no, that's oftentimes if you get a lot of no's when you're trying to do something, even real estate wise, your lawyer, your bank financing, or your lenders, your investors, any component on your team could all of a sudden say that's not possible, or we don't do things that way, or just no. And then it's well, then you have to counter it with good questions, do your research, and find out how to get a yes, how to find another way to do it.
Yeah.
And through doing some of that, we've been able to figure out how to do some things that I just don't see other real estate investors really doing.
Yeah.
When you learn some of the rules and the do's and don'ts, there's a lot of people are a little bit stuck inside a box that there's only a certain way to do something.
Right.
So if I could as just a little aside as a lesson, so how do you trap an elephant, Dan?
How do you trap an elephant?
Yeah.
Well, you'd probably have to bait him first, right? Bring him in. And then you need a pretty big trap. Okay.
Well, what if you had a baby elephant And well, you had that baby elephant, you tied a string to one of its legs and you put a post in the ground. And now this baby elephant tries, and it's young, it's learning its territory, it's learning its boundaries. It gets to the end of the rope and it pulls on it and it can't get out.
Mm-hmm.
So what happens is that elephant it grows up.
Right.
And now it's like a full adult elephant with all the power that an adult elephant has.
Mm-hmm.
And yet they can put that little rope, and they don't even need to anchor it very strong in the ground, because the elephant can feel that the rope is on it. It will not try to pull to go past its boundaries. It's learned them at a young age.
Right.
And so people get stuck in these boxes where they think it can only be done one way.
Mm-hmm.
And all of a sudden I come in around the corner from somewhere that nobody's expecting. And there is ways to do this. There's ways to still accomplish this if you still want to go ahead with it, of course. But, there's a lot of creative ways to getting yeses and pushing projects or even just your goals ahead and moving things forward when other people will just stop.
Right.
And so that's the difference of that perseverance. Never give up and keep trying different ways.
Mm-hmm. It's a bit of a perspective shift there, right? Looking at it from a different angle. How do you think that the perspective on even looking at business or what a business is, because you were looking early on at landlording as even a business, or, running something for yourself and hiring someone, not necessarily, well, you did have a bricks and mortar, but even without a bricks and mortar, this is business. How do you think the perspective and the landscape of what constitutes a business has changed in our life, and not only now, right?
I think there's a lot of ways that there is brick and mortar businesses and there is like a purpose for them. But with a lot of the way that business is evolving, you can have a business which has very little like visible assets, like things you can touch and hold. A lot of things are done digitally.
A lot of IP.
Exactly. Like I always thought, so we have Uber. I'm not like super familiar. I don't use the service. It's never been available in my areas where I've lived. But, we have like Uber that controls like cars. Mm-hmm. They don't own any cars. People volunteer. They sign up that own a car already. And now they can become an Uber driver.
Yeah.
They can earn a bit of income. But for the business Uber itself is they own no cars. They maintain no cars, but yet they get a piece of that ride.
Right.
And so I kind of used to think of like rent to own real estate being like a similar thing, because you can have it as a tangible. It can be a brick and mortar business when there's like a buy and hold and you have a renter in there for 20 years and that's the place. It's kind of like a brick and mortar because they're renting that space.
Mm-hmm.
Yet at the same time, if we do a rent to own, we can actually control everything with contracts. We don't even need to own anything. And we can be selling things that we don't even own for more money and making an actual profit. And at the same time, so we can control everything, own nothing, still profit from it, and at the same time deliver a valuable service to the end user who's actually thrilled and happy to be achieving home ownership through the form of that.
Yeah. You've been really successful with rent to owns, and there's a lot of people that see different, like there's tons of strategies in real estate, right? I know a lot of people, including myself, have looked into rent to own. Why have you found such success in rent to own versus anything else?
So there's a few key things. Like one is going all out. So I definitely went very all out in terms of rent to own, doing a lot less of it these days, but for a good over a decade, almost 15 years. And I still have like videos available on my YouTube channel that we used to use, but it was by being first and foremost an educator. Mm-hmm. Because whatever subject it might be, if you're building a home, we look at you to be the expert builder, to know about product knowledge, to know how things get fit together.
Yep.
Is that like tour it off in the corner a good idea or not? You might be a good guy to say, that's not really possible, or it's going to cost you a lot of money if you really want it. Right?
Yeah, anything's possible, but it's going to cost you.
And so taking like a business approach to it and being able to help people out and be an educator first. So whether it's a lender or a property seller or someone who's going to hold on to the property for a couple years while we put the buyer through our rent-own program, help them buy the house, it's educating that seller, how does this work?
Mm-hmm.
What are good practices and not good practices? I'm not the only rent-to-own company out there. Maybe another one goes there and, and they say some things differently. Well, there's best practices that over many years of doing this that I would stick to. And there's certain practices that I would never advise anyone go towards, and it's usually in the fine print in the contracts. But I've seen, I've been called in to clean up rent-to-own deals too. And usually it's the fact that there's a lack of education to the property seller, a lack of education to the property buyer, and even the company putting it together has a lack of education.
I was one of the things that really hit me is I was listening to someone, they were asked to give a talk about business ethics. And he said, there is no business ethics. There's only ethics, right? There's no difference between your personal ethics and your business ethics. How you operate in your daily life, how you do things one way is how you do everything.
Oh, absolutely.
Right. And we've seen that in real estate, no matter how much.
I see that too. If he cheats on his wife, he's going to cheat on his business partners.
Right.
If he's married and hitting on the waitress, and that's a sign of a problem.
Right.
That's maybe a guy you don't want to get into business with.
Right.
Just simply because of the ethic. It might be a great opportunity. He might have the greatest new invention since sliced bread, mm-hmm. or whatever the case may be. Whatever's going on is you need to deal with someone like that. It's probably not a good idea.
Right. And that's partnering, right? Yeah. Whether you're partnering with someone, whether you have an investor.
His wife is his partner, and if he's not treating her very good, then what's he going to be like to a partner, like a business partner?
He's not married to.
That he's not married to. He's probably going to be even worse.
Right.
You'd at least like to think you'd treat the wife as number one.
Yeah.
But still, how you do one thing is how you do everything. So cheat on one person, you'll cheat on another person.
Yeah.
Rob from one person, rob from another. I would always go around and pre-qualify a lot of my joint venture partners by playing the Cashflow 101 board game. So have you played that game?
I have it downstairs.
Yeah, okay. And I used to host a once a month meetup group for about 10 years. We would go to the college. We have 3, 4, 5 games on the go, maybe 6 if it's kind of a lot of people showed up, and 4 to 6 people per game board.
Yeah.
And so everyone would play, and I would host these. We would make up our own rules. I would be the government and change borrowing rates, and suddenly deals that didn't look so good people were doing because the rates were good, and then I would change the rates on them again, and then now their deals that they got into are to make people think a little more than even just what a normal game plays like.
Yeah.
And
it's thinking outside the box of the game. Yeah.
And so a good way to filter some of these people is to watch how they play. So I used that room to get to know people better. I did almost no selling in those rooms. In fact, the reason the college would let me put that on and teach was because we weren't actually there selling products and things. So it's bonus. It was cheap. It the price to rent the room goes from $50 a night to $200 and something an hour.
Right.
If you're selling stuff in the room. So as soon as there's a big no, we're just teaching. We're just here to have fun.
Yeah.
And so I never did a big push to sell my courses or other things like that in the room. People knew I had them, and it was great to be the host of that.
Mm-hmm.
And I would notice, and I would take people out for coffees afterwards, get to know them a bit better. And if I wanted to, I would put a real estate deal in front of them if it was something I thought that would benefit them.
Mm-hmm.
And if I thought they were the right fit for it. And so I did a lot of prospecting in those rooms. and I would watch as people played the game. And for those who don't know, it's like Monopoly on steroids. And you can buy stocks, you can buy real estates, you can grow businesses, you can start something in your part-time in your garage, and suddenly it's earning you enough of an income you can quit your job.
Right.
And so everyone's goal is to make enough investments so that their investment income is greater than their expenses. And when that occurs, they can quit their job and, leave the rat race behind them and go into the world of being a business owner and an investor. So changing which of the ESBI side of the quadrant they're on by making that shift. And while people are playing that game and they're going around the rat race, their behaviors in the game mirror their money beliefs. And so a person who's playing that game, who has hidden away $5,000 in underneath something, underneath a card, underneath the game board, something, that's their rainy day fund. They play through the whole game knowing in the back of their mind they got this $5,000 that if times are tough, they can always use.
Right.
Most of the time they go through the whole game, they never use that. So what that tells me is if I sit down and put a project in front of them that's going to require some money, they want to hold back, I only have $10,000.
Yeah.
Well, I know from their behavior in the game that they have something else tucked away. Right. That might be more substantial than just, the $5,000 in the game.
Yeah.
So the chance to upgrade them or sell them into more of the project exists.
That's a huge, cash flow is a huge education. It's turned education into a game, right? And gamifying things is a phenomenal way to teach. What are some of have there ever been any monster light bulb moments as far as learning something for you or for someone else that you've seen that have just been the biggest push for you?
Whenever everything can all of a sudden kind of click, and oftentimes I would get a lot of aha moments by going to a lot of different seminars and taking a lot of different courses.
Okay.
And your brain fires in different ways. You see a new way to do something, a new concept opens up. And so I would start hanging around other people who had more experience than me, who had, I have a group of, we always call them the Bear Lake crew. It's 100 to 170 people or so that get together and just have a good time and go on the lake and make good friendships. And ultimately, these are some pretty prominent business owners, but we would always get together just for fun.
Yeah.
And it became we had a group code of ethics within the group that we all sat down and formalized. We made this whole crew.
Yeah.
And about a third of my lenders come from just being a part of that group. And I'm starting to put a bit of age on me now, but at the time, I was one of the only guys in his 20s. There's one other guy younger than me in this crew. Everyone else is 60, 70 plus at this point in time.
Yeah.
And so being one of those young guys, and you go there, you have fun, and it's not a time to be getting crazy drunk and partying. Yeah, there'll be a bit of that going on. Everyone will have a bit of a laugh, but it's better to sit around the fire and ask them questions about what their year's been like since the last time a gathering took place, and just hear. Because when people are open and honest, from there we can hear about the wildly successful mechanic shop or a trucking shop that one guy owns and what it's allowed him to do and the lessons he's learned.
Right.
All of a sudden you find out a business partner's son's been stealing, and it's what did you do to deal with that? He had a gambling problem. Okay. He always thought he could put it back. Okay. Well, how did you handle that? And then if I'm going through something in my business life, then I know that I can consult a guy like that who is willing to be open and vulnerable to the group.
Yeah.
But yet not go around spreading details who the person is, what the business is, the true nature of it. Because there's a degree of privacy, because they've everyone in the group allows themselves to be vulnerable, but yet nothing really leaves. No, those privy details don't really leave. So it's really nice to have a super experienced group of people like that who's a good crowd to like lean on a little bit.
As men, we don't often, one, reach out, but two, I find that, you know, in compared to women, we don't generally call many friends, you know, just to talk about things, to share stories, ask for advice, stuff like that. And then you add a business owner or an entrepreneur on top of that, which in itself is a lonely thing, right? Like we're generally so focused on our work and building the company and the stresses that go along with that. Those kind of groups are, I mean, they're invaluable.
I mean, where you can get your support from. I'm completely guilty of like working too hard at times. A huge thing is like perseverance and spending those extra hours and time on like what's a holiday? I don't come up on the calendar and everyone's like, oh, they got the day off work. I'm not used to.
Things don't stop just because.
Yeah, they never stopped before. All of a sudden, I'm like learning about these different Labor Days and stuff like that. Going, oh, well, I just plugged on through. Or if I had a job at the time and was employed and had the day off, it was still spent working on the side hustle.
Yeah.
You know, with the one day of like actually playing that cash flow game in real life and quitting that job and getting that passive income greater than your expenses.
Yeah. There's no better way to learn about holidays than when you have employees, because you learn about them really quick.
They all want the time
What do
off.
you mean you're not coming in on Monday? They're like, Dad, it's Christmas.
It's Christmas.
Oh yeah, that's right. Okay, yeah. No, I guess you can have that day off.
Well, even when I did City of Winnipeg water department work, water and waste, you know, a little bit of time as garbage man, a little bit of time repairing water mains and doing work like that on the outside of buildings, digging holes, jumping in the hole, fixing the pipe.
Yeah.
While it's gushing out water. Like that's the more exciting side of it, but it could be as simple as painting a fire hydrant. You know, like the tasks of the water department there's a huge variety between them. But those guys they don't get a holiday off.
Emergent water's 24/7.
They're considered an emergency service. You might get a bit of time on the holiday if you're working, where you could sneak away and be home for an hour or two, where the guys are going to all cover for each other so that you can have like a little bit of a Christmas with their kid or something. You know, but without having like huge family of my own on the go, I would just work it, let those guys go see their families during that time.
Yeah, double time never hurts. Or overtime or whatever.
Or whatever you're earning. Yeah.
Nice.
And so like some of those that was a shift work, and it didn't matter whether it was a holiday or not.
Right. Yeah.
Same thing working in the oil sands. If you stop oil production, it can take weeks for them to get it started again. So they don't stop.
No.
It doesn't pay to stop.
Yeah.
Like it costs a lot of money for them to do a shutdown. So keeping that object in motion, staying in motion, means that people are going to have days off. And the way the oil company treats it, you could have your shift ending on Christmas and another guy's starting on Boxing Day, and that's your shift. That's how it falls on the calendar. There is no moving it around. You're not going to make one shift work.
You're showing up.
If your shift is to work through both days, you're working both days, whatever it is, that's it. You don't get to say it.
That's what actually got me about the fire department, was that it's not really me that they need. It's a warm body, right?
Yeah.
So it was, you show up on this day, and if you don't show up, we'll just bring someone else in. And so to me, that was like, oh, okay, well, I'm not that special.
Yeah.
Maybe I need to make myself special. Maybe I have to learn more and educate myself a little more. There is that kind of loneliness part that we do, like when we're working on a holiday or you know, even in an office when we're working and we don't want to be bothered, right? We're secluding ourselves, not only as men but business owners. What do you think is the hardest part about owning and building a business?
I think it's making sure. I see some people have a hard time with getting their day started or getting it going. because they like oftentimes they have their home office
Mm-hmm.
before it turns into a functioning business where and it may not even need a brick and mortar place.
Mm-hmm.
One of the last places I had an office, I've had a few in the last few years, but one of them was just the Staples in Kelowna. And they built out this state-of-the-art area in the back. They would rent out offices. And I took like an office. I had a business partner who took an office.
Oh, yeah.
And, nice glass doors and everything. But then they rented out these other spots that were just communal. And this is like the way a lot of things were going pre-COVID was a lot of like communal sharing, communal workspaces. They would have these little desks and these people would be paying hundreds and hundreds of dollars per month just so they could go somewhere other than their house to sit down and get their work done.
Yeah.
And like, I just like to observe in general, but I sometimes like, man, that guy's like always working. I don't even know his name. I don't even get like see him fill up his coffee cup or get a fresh water. He's just like
Hammering down.
got his headphones on and he's just always plugging away. He must be making good use of this space.
Yeah.
Then I see other people and it's like, man, that person, all they do is go get coffee all day. Like, did they really need to have this space away from their home to get focused?
Right.
So I think a lot of people have a hard time whether they have that external space, but even harder when that space is like right close to home.
How do you ensure that you're starting your day properly?
I'm up quite a bit earlier than I actually start my day.
Okay. Doing what?
Well, this morning I went for an hour and a half for a walk before coming here.
Nice.
And we started recording this at 7:30 in the morning.
Yeah.
So I was up and out before 5:30 a.m.
Beautiful.
And it woke me up. There is crisp. It's fall time. And so that's a good way to get started. Another good thing is like get a few things done that are non-work related.
Right.
Have a nice breakfast. Eat a decent, I love eggs. I eat a lot of them. So I'll make myself an omelet. If anyone knows me like really well personally, then I'll have made an omelet for you. You know it's delicious.
Yeah. Yeah. If you're part of the Jon Simcoe omelet club.
Yeah, exactly.
Perfect.
And you'll never have the same one twice. I know who's had what omelet and I'll never make it again.
Really? So I did not know you're the omelet king.
If you enjoy a nice omelet, you'll never enjoy that bite exactly how it is because I'll never do it again for you.
Really?
Yeah.
Well, I hope I make the omelet club one day.
Yeah.
Maybe when I come visit you and on your home turf.
I'll come visit you. I bring the pan and everything.
I like it. Would you ever move back to Winnipeg?
I'd consider it. I have my family and parents here, and there is a lot of opportunities in Winnipeg that I'm seeing. There's definitely a lot.
Yeah.
So it's a matter of like, do I need to be physically here or not to do things?
Right. What is it about Winnipeg that you either love or that you really hate?
I actually, Winnipeg has grown more and more fond for me the longer I've been away. And I actually really, really enjoy coming back to Winnipeg now. I consider Winnipeg to be probably one of the best cities in the prairies.
Okay. Why is it?
It's underrated. It's easy to look at a place like Calgary, which is a beautiful city as well. I consider them a pinnacle here in Western Canada. Vancouver's kind of its own thing. Toronto's its own thing. They're both really huge metropolises and very like cutting edge state-of-the-art cities.
Yep.
But then everything else here in Canada is just like a big town. And I really like the fact that Winnipeg has a very well-developed art scene.
Oh, yeah.
They have like a great art gallery. They have great live performances. They have concerts.
World class.
They're world class. Winnipeg is one of the top 10 places to see a concert and show.
Right.
The arena that was designed has amazing acoustics. If you get a chance to take it in, the Forks has developed hugely. Even just going to see a Gold Eyes game is a fun experience.
Mm-hmm.
Doesn't have to be major league to have a good time.
Yeah.
And so Winnipeg, in terms of like the value it offers, the variety of food and cuisine and culture, Winnipeg is a great place to visit. and it's actually a very affordable place to live.
That's right.
So it has a lot of good things going for it. Whereas, like, because you're either like a prestige city where you have like your booming arts and your high level of architecture, and it's a pretty city, or you have your value city, and that's where things are cheap. Home is cheap. There's blue collar jobs, and Winnipeg's always been considered a value city. But I like to see that there's sides of it on the other side, on the more of the showy side, where some of the architecture and some of the buildings that have been going up and the way the skyline's been changing, it's really like projecting itself as a little bit more of a bit of a fancier, Winnipeg wants to be fancy, I think.
They do. I mean, the Human Rights Museum, that was a monster. It seems like we have a lot of attractions here that are, really nice to see and to just partake in. Those definitely help our tourism. They help make it a pretty city. They give us stuff to do. How is Winnipeg in the business environment, do you think, in comparison to other cities and places that you could, say, do real estate in, start a business, anything like that? Is it different than other cities that way?
I think it depends a little what your business is.
Okay.
I never, and like, some people may say the homes in Winnipeg are affordable. You could open a real estate business in Winnipeg. There's these cheap homes, although they keep going up in price. They're not as cheap as they used to be. As Winnipeg always seems to just appreciate a little over little. And guess what? Time goes on, prices are up.
Yeah.
And that doesn't really experience tons of like huge crashes. But I never allowed the entry barrier or price to get into, like, say, a house to do, whether it's a fix and flip or a rental or whatever your end goal is with that property, or, just because it might be like cheaper to get into
doesn't make it a better deal.
Yeah. I would always look at what is the average price of a home in a city, and it might be lower in Winnipeg than it was in Fort McMurray or Kelowna or Vernon, or even like places near Hamilton. I've even done investment projects on the East Coast. I've done them like not every province, but most of places in Canada. I've done some sort of project or a series of them because I was there, or somewhere I never even had to visit and could do those projects sight unseen. Where it is possible. So I would, if the average price is $500,000 in a different city, and in Winnipeg maybe it's 200, I don't know the real numbers, but let's just say that those are the differences. And you're looking to raise capital to create that business and launch that forward, it should make sense at the 500,000 level just as much as it does at the 200,000. It has to make sense.
It's all ratios.
Yeah, the ratio has to be there. If you're getting extra capital to put into it, there should be enough to be able to pay for it to come out.
Right. Have you done real estate deals in Winnipeg?
Yeah, I had some buy and holds in Winnipeg while I was in Alberta.
Right.
I got some owner financings on a couple places, as well as my very first rental property was in Winnipeg.
Beautiful. One thing we didn't touch on is, in 1 year, you've done like 93 deals.
Yeah.
Which is, it's insane. Yeah. Like I said, that is more deals in 1 year than most investors will do in their life.
Just from having the systems well worked out.
Right. Do you think that...
there was 24 the year before it. And the December leading up to the 93, I did 6 in.
Yeah.
So as soon as I did 6 in 1 month in a slow month of real estate, should we just keep going?
Yeah.
So as soon as I did 6 in the month, I had a goal of doing like 1 each month. I wanted to do 10 for the year, and it allowed 2 months if they were non-performing months. And so my goal was to like set up more or less 10 rent-to-owns, or whether there's a buy and hold and 9 rent-to-owns.
Yeah.
And that was my internal goal. And I had my systems kind of going, and I figured out a different style of rent to own. I had to, because the market had changed. And when the market changed, all those other companies that only knew one style of deal making, they all like stopped. They all stopped doing new projects, they stopped doing rent own deals. They maybe went and did other things.
Yeah.
But and I can say from being a director in the Canadian Association of Rent Own Professionals now, at the time, it was a growing association. They're a nonprofit, so it's all volunteer work. And they continue to grow without me, which is awesome to see. I love seeing those guys do what they do and try and make rent to own a more ethical place. Mm-hmm. And when the market changed, now just the numbers of membership within had a lot of people in Alberta, when the market changed, just stopped doing rent owns. Saskatchewan as well. Then they stopped being members of the association. Said, well, we're not doing new deals. We don't need to pay these fees.
Right.
And they're right. If they're not getting anything out of it, then why would you pay?
Yep.
So there was a huge drop off. And at the same time, I was figuring out a different way to get things done.
You're coming from a different angle.
Well, yeah, like you have, like going back to my dad, find another way to do it. I was so scared when I was a little one trick pony rent own guy too. And I was so scared, I actually applied for my old job at the time.
Really?
And then I figured things out, and then it took them forever to get back to me. And by the time they did, I had things go. I know I don't need this.
Yeah.
But I at one point was like very scared. I wasn't out of money. I wasn't out of resources. But suddenly, like what I knew how to do, everything changed.
Right.
And by figuring out how to change the tide, it turned out to make me one of the more successful people in it, having done like 93 of them. And that was the same year that the Fort McMurray fire came through. So I did get a bit delayed, did some projects in Ontario and other things while evacuated. So it's not like business totally stopped. Business goes where I go.
Yeah.
And so it was a big difference to go from the previous year of having a goal of 10 deals and accomplishing 24 deals, so 2 a month instead of 1 a month. We're not doing anything earth-shattering here.
Yeah.
But the reality is that I had done 18 of them in 11 months, and the final month, the month of December, I went and did 6. And it was a slow month real estate wise, and all of a sudden those 6 deals that I did was like 20 or 25% of all the transactions. And now it's the month of December, it's a historically low.
Yeah.
But all of a sudden this like guy can show up, buy a few properties, and suddenly the price of real estate is trending lower because I got some good deals on a few places.
So good.
And so by the time those 6 deals came through in 1 month,
Yeah.
that was a game changer because I had this, like, I knew possibilities for the next year's goals were possible. And a friend gave me that Grant Cardone 10X, like actual audio CDs. And I used to spend a lot of time driving to events and to seminars in other cities. So a lot of my time learning was on the road.
Yeah.
And I was listening to this Grant Cardone 10X. And all of a sudden I had it in my head, I'm going to go from doing a goal of 20 grand more than their house is worth, and they'd have to pay a realtor to sell their place. And suddenly we could show them that in maybe 2.5 or 3 years time, that their house might be paid down by 30, 40 or 50 grand, and that they can walk away with 10 grand in their pocket instead of having to take a loan out and owe like 40 grand to sell their house.
Yeah.
And so we're suddenly solving a problem like that. And it doesn't matter whether times are booming or not so booming. There is always rent-to-own buyers. There's always somebody who wants a way to get into a house.
Yeah.
Most of it that make good applicants are family members. Anyone can be a good applicant, but when they have that real reason to succeed, and that's in the right place, and they've had all their background checks done, there's like methods to doing it, do's and don'ts. But when you found the right person and you have the right house and you put them together, then you have yourself a nice rent-own deal. And we would call that the sandwich deal when you put the two together.
Right.
So all of a sudden I got this reputation where people were coming to me and offering their houses. You're the guy who can solve this problem. And I would have buyers coming up to me all the time too. If I walked around in the mall, people come to me, buy my house. Well, I'm probably not going to buy it, but I'll tell you what else we can do with it.
Yeah.
Tell me more about why you want to sell. And so really by providing value to those sellers, they were agreeable to wanting to do it, and by providing value to the buyers. And then on top of it, most of the time when a rent-own company exists, it's usually a mom and pop. By that I mean a very small business with a small amount of working capital. And they might have the capacity to buy 2 or 3 or 4 properties, and they'll run their rent-own program doing, I would recommend 2 to 3 year long deals. If they take a bit longer in real life, they do. But, you know, if the person doesn't look like they can check out after 3 years, you should go find another person. Mm-hmm. That's just statistically looking at all the rent-owns in Canada, not even just my own. After 3 years, there's a much bigger drop-off rate in success. Right. So if you can do it in 2 or 3, great.
That's kind of the cutoff.
Yeah, and a lot can change in a market in, say, 5 years. I know people that were setting up 5-year-long rent-own deals that really had no business putting those people in the property or setting them up that way.
Crazy.
So we have this ability to now be the Uber of real estate, and we can control these. I didn't need to like buy with a bunch of investors or expensive money these properties because they were being given to me. Mm-hmm. Well, not quite given. Like we gave people some money, we call it move out money, and there's a way to making it all work.
Yeah.
But largely we weren't using $100,000 to put down on a $500,000 property.
You were solving a problem.
We were solving a problem, and I no longer needed to get new financing to put these real estate deals through.
Right.
And as long as we did a good job with our screening of our tenant buyer, things worked out pretty good. And by going bigger than a mom and pop place, by having more than just one property to offer someone or 2 properties, I would have 8, 6, 8. If I had about 14, then it was time to focus on the buyer side. Mm-hmm. And so I would have, and I learned this from being a car salesman, and I literally copied the same system as them. So I had all these I had a big giant whiteboard in my office, and it was the deal board, and I had all these magnets that were like rectangles.
Okay.
And all the information to the house was there. 3-2, 3-bedroom, 2-bath. Mm-hmm. You know, 5-3, 5-bedroom, 3-bath.
Reminds me of a game of
the address. Yeah. Very much so. All the pertinent information, just like on a cash flow card.
Yeah.
The monthly rent, the this, the that, just the important information. Mm-hmm. And so I would put it on the board on one side. And then I would have my other magnets on the other side of the board with my buyers that had been screened. Mm-hmm. And I would give them all ratings like A+, A-, some B pluses. Can we turn them into an A? Can we net this B plus? Can we get them looking a little nicer financially? Can they put a bit more down? That's usually could be the difference.
Yeah.
And then the other one's being very polite to them and educating those buyers and treating everyone like a real person. They just want a house.
Yeah.
A lot of rent-to-own companies, if you
usually credit, that's the issue, or what is it usually?
The main reason we would focus on helping a lot of people were a lot of new immigrants who needed to establish credit in Canada. Okay. They have money to put down. Yep. They're not planning to move, and they probably
not bad credit, just no credit.
Just no credit. We can pull credit in the country they're coming from and see what is this person's habits.
Oh, interesting.
Because habits don't change.
I bet you there's not many people that do that.
No, I don't know.
Pulling credit from other countries.
If the person's like really serious and they got some money to put down, let's check them out.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Especially if that's their reason. Or are they a train wreck in the other country? They might have some money to put down, but
it doesn't make sense. Yeah.
Maybe it's from a line of credit. It's not even their money. And it's like,
yeah.
So you have to like take that extra. What's their real reason, and is it justified? We would have divorcing people that we helped out as well. So oftentimes you'd have a wife or a husband who has separated, they're out of the house, they might have some kids, and they want to have a house. They're planning to they don't want to move their kids around a whole bunch. They want their kids to go to a certain school that's in a certain neighborhood, and that's what's important to them. They're not planning to move, but the divorce isn't finalized. And it doesn't make sense for them to go buying new property until the divorce is totally done.
Yeah, which could take years.
Sometimes it can.
Yeah.
Oh, I can remember extending some deals because the divorce wasn't quite worked out yet. They had all the money put up, just we couldn't put the property into their name just yet.
That's right.
Until the divorce is, how's that going? Especially, I've had people leave in a rent-owned house. I've had one leave the household. We've requalified the wife who made more money than the husband. She could still afford to stay in the rent-owned by herself, barely, but we could work with her. It was possible. And then turn around and put the husband in another rent-to-own, like a slightly smaller house that he could afford.
Interesting.
And they both, and I'm like, I know like divorce details about you, and I know divorce details about you, and I'm in this like middle neutral position. I can't be like gossiping about one to the other. And I just like, we're going to get you the house. We're going to get you the house.
Yeah.
And are you guys almost done? You're back and forth. No, you're not. Oh man.
Keep the deals going. So would you say that it's your ability to be resourceful and change strategies or for your growth, or would it be your systems that was the biggest push for your growth?
While having a business model that would work was and ditching the old one quickly was important. And being able to close most of those deals. I got stuck with one house throughout all of that, which is actually, I'm grateful it was only one house because the market value started to fall. We were borrowing money to buy houses and the market started to fall. Well, you get the picture. You can't pay out big money when the value's not there. Also, the person who's supposed to buy the house has a preset buyout price. And if the value isn't there, the bank isn't going to like giving them financing. So as much as we want to like get the top price possible, you have to be like realistic about what the price is actually going to be in the future.
Is that knowing the market?
It's knowing the market, researching the market, finger on the pulse. I can remember the exact moment the market changed.
Really?
Yeah. I've felt it a few times while I lived in Fort Mac.
Yeah.
Most people, like, Dan, how long have you been doing real estate here in Winnipeg?
15 years.
About 15 years.
Yeah.
Has Winnipeg really had any major corrections in the last 15 years?
You know, even when the world fell apart in 2008, we're kind of so diverse that we felt a little something, but we still kind of like we're in our little hole and we looked out and the world's falling apart. And we haven't had major corrections. We're not a boom and bust economy, right? So it hasn't. That's one of the nice things about Winnipeg is you don't have to try to time the market.
And if there's like a major change, it can take a while for you guys to actually feel it as well.
We've got a good leg behind the rest of the world almost, it seems.
And being in an oil town where I did a lot of it, that desperately wanted to diversify and have more than only oil be a reason to go to Fort McMurray.
Yeah.
They were keen to have any type of business growth outside of the oil sector.
Right.
But for every 2 people who worked in town, 1 person worked in the oil sands. That was the stat and ratio. And most of the people that I helped get homes were like those union working oil field workers because they had steady work.
Right.
And even in the downturn, often still continued to work. They didn't just all get laid off all the time.
Yeah.
And so by having like knowing who you're doing this for and making sure that you're serving the right demographic helps.
Yeah.
So you have to, and you can feel when there's fewer factors, the change between boom and bust is very dramatic.
What would you tell somebody who's fresh or yourself as an 18-year-old, you're getting into that after everything you know now? What's some of the best piece of advice that you would give them starting out?
I would say if you're going to have a partner, sometimes joint venturing can be a good way to get ahead quickly. Make sure that you guys have skill sets that are complementary and that you're not duplicating yourself. You're not scared, so you're taking on a friend to share the risk. because sharing half the reward is not as much fun either. You'll realize that expensive partner could have been replaced by a lender with an interest rate, and you can still pay them generously, will cost you less than having a partner who takes maybe half of something early on.
Right.
I would also encourage anyone who's starting out to they might be very hungry. I see a lot of people. I've met with a few people recently who've asked for a little bit of advice, and I see some young people who want to make a track record for themselves, and that's good, because the more your track record is, the more people you'll attract to you, and the bigger it comes, the more success you have, the more people will take notice and want to be a part of that with you. Don't get too caught up with paying very expensive loans. I've seen a lot of people starting out where they've done a project, paid a lender 15 or 20% because they really wanted to get them into the deal or more. And at the end of the day, the person putting the deal together is sweating bullets. They maybe made $3,000 when it was all done. They were moving hundreds and hundreds of thousands of dollars, maybe of labor and building materials, property. There's a lot,
Stress.
and there can be a lot of stress and risk to only walk away with like $3,000. Meanwhile, the investor's got a check for like 60 grand profit.
Right.
Like, don't give it all away, and don't work. It's good to, I always wanted to be fair and treat my lenders well, and I always would try and pay them as much as possible, which is a very different approach than I think most people would say. What have you earned before? What have you lent out at before? Oh, I can show you how to do a little better. And then they get their clients that way. And my approach was always like, I've done my due diligence. This is how much this can pay comfortably.
Do you want it?
Do you want it?
Yep.
Or if you don't, I'll go put something together that has other safe criteria that will pay a little better. And I've turned around and asked people, I know you're used to getting a certain rate. This project, the numbers make more sense at 1% less. Will you take 1% less this time around versus, and I'll make sure I give you something that might pay you two additional points on the next go around. I'll make sure, but right now, the way this project's ending and the next one starts, it's probably in their best interest to keep the velocity of money, which means them keep their money moving and working, and take 1% less to keep it working in something that's safe. Than to wait around for something that pays the 1% higher. Especially if the project's going to be short, like 1 year or less timeline. Then it also gives me time to go find something that I can reward them for taking a little bit less a bit later.
Is there anything that I should have asked you? What's something that people don't ask you, but they should be?
What kind of omelet does Jon Simcoe make for himself?
Yes.
So I always make omelets for everyone else.
What's the answer to that question?
I normally have omelets when other people are having omelets. I spend very little time actually making them for myself. I will make the same one twice for myself, but I'm the only person.
That's fair.
And typically, if I can have some green onions, some ham, and a nice quality of cheese. That's enough. Just a nice. Take a very classic omelet, but it just has all the right flavor profiles, and some nice ham if you're putting it in there too, right?
It's phenomenal. It's so funny.
Just simple. Some mushrooms. Yeah, mushroom ham, cheese, onion.
Well, I want to. I first want to thank you for your time. I know you're a busy guy. But I also wanted to honor you as far as, you've always been someone that I've seen, that I've been reading, that I've followed. But your stuff has also inspired a lot of my stuff too. But your ability to, not only pivot and grow, but I absolutely love your view on systems. And I think that is it's incredible what you've done. I think it's incredible what you bring to the industry. You're bringing a lot of ethics and morals that we need in real estate. And I think that's why you've been so successful. So Thanks so much for being here, and I appreciate it.
Thanks for having me, Dan. See you next time.
You bet. Yeah.